Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How y'all doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I'm doing my next video in my palette roulette series in which I review a palette that is in my collection that might also be in your collection. It's not necessarily about the brightest newest palette out there, but it is about all the palettes that I have into my collection. And as I bring palettes into my collection, new, old, or whatever, antique even, I put them into my drawer of shame until I have reviewed the palette, whether I have used them or not. Today we will be going over the Lunar Beauty Moonspell 2 palette, which is a palette that was brought into my collection as a declutter from a friend of mine, Kim, here on the platform from Teacher Loves Beauty. She had it in her collection. She decluttered it to me, and I am so excited about this palette. I was excited to have it in my collection and still feel the same way about it today, which is always a plus. If that sounds like something you're interested in watching, please keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care, and ultimately this is my self-care. Come out here, talk to you guys about the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things that come into my collection and leave my collection. I'd like you to know about them, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I enjoy being here. There isn't anybody else in my world that likes to talk about makeup with me than you guys, so I pick you. You evidently pick me. Hopefully, if you're new here, you'll want to subscribe before you go, and with that said, let's walk into this review, this palette roulette video where I am reviewing the Lunar Beauty Moonspell 2 palette with you. Alright, so for those of you new around these parts, we do a review on a palette that might be in my collection. We also have swatches. I show you some eye looks. I tell you all the things that I experienced when I use the palette. That could be different from what you've experienced when you've used the palette. I just like to give you my thoughts and opinions. And if you have something to add to the discussion, please leave it down in the comment section. I would love for us all to gain the wealth out of all of the knowledge out there. Today we are reviewing the Lunar Beauty Moonspell 2 palette. This is the sister palette to the Moonspell palette, which I also have. It was a Halloween launch 4 years ago, yes, which means the Moonspell 1 was a launch 2 years before that, so 6 years that palette has been coveted on the market. And for 4 years, this one has been coveted. This one was supposed to be a limited edition as well, but it is still for sale on the Lunar Beauty website. I realize that white is probably the absolute wrongest color to wear when reviewing this palette, because this palette is full of reds and purples, and God forbid I get any of those on me, so we're going to try not to talk about that because I have found that I like to jinx myself. The Lunar Beauty Moonspell 2 palette regular price is $48, and as I said, it is still for sale on the Lunar Beauty website. This is a palette that has 0.66 ounces of product in it, 20 shades, so that equates to 0.03 ounces per pan of eyeshadow in here. This has 0.66 ounces of product as well, but there are 15 pans, which I think equates to about 0.04 ounces per pan. And I don't know why he went from 15 pans to 20 pans with this one, but they both have the same, like, similar, like, thought process in which they are kind of like a spell book. The Moonspell 1 has like a moth and a bee and a skull and eye and like a snake and a spider in here, and the doves up top. This one has like tree branches, 2 skulls, a dagger, a heart, scales, and a potion bottle on it. So same kind of thought process and spellbook-esque. They both have the locks. They both have the gold binding on them. So they're very similar, but as far as size, you guys can see that the Moonspell 2 is just slightly bigger because it does have 5 additional shades in it. This is cruelty-free and vegan. Manny tries to make sure that his brand Lunar Beauty does stay within that cruelty-free and vegan mindset. So in that, there are shades in here that are not ice safe. I go back to, this has 20 shades in it. 16 of those shades are not ice safe, quote unquote. Now, that just means the FDA has not approved them for eye safety, because instead of using like beetles to make reds, we're using dyes instead. That also means that there could be some irritation in your eye area if you use them on the eyes. That also means there is potentially staining on your eyes. There's definitely staining on your eyes with this palette. As a matter of fact, part of the look today I had to do and redo because I took off the other eye primer that I was using and put on a white based eye primer because the other eye primer I was using wasn't quite covering up the amount of staining underneath that eye primer, and I wanted these shadows to be really true color. So there's that. There is definitely staining with this palette, but I did use every single shade on my eye, and I also used quite a few of them under my eye, even though they're not eye safe. And you know that under your eye you do get quite a bit more of that shadow in your eye because you're using it right along the waterline. And I didn't have any kind of irritation with my eyes. Definitely staining, no irritation. There are 11 mattes in here, 8 shimmers and 1 sequin shadow, which is a matte shadow that has glitters inside of it. Although on the website it says that there are 13 mattes and 7 shimmers. So I don't know how that even could be possible, and I'll show you when I tell you about the shades. Anyways, this is what the front of the palette looks like. It's very cool. Like I said, it's kind of got that spell book motif. Looks like it's got a lock over here so that you're locking it up, kind of like a diary. It's got gold binding, so it looks like pages from a book. And then even the binding over here, the gold binding, has like little rivets in it, so it does look like pages in a book. And then the back of it looks like this. It's just got some information about Manny MUA and the Lunar Beauty brand, and then it's got information about the palette with the shelf life being 24 months. It's a powder product, so like take that with a grain of salt. It does say cruelty free on here, tells you about the weight of the palette, etc., etc. On the inside of the palette, you're going to see a nice sized mirror with my fingerprints all over it. And then you do have the shades in this palette. I wore this eye look today to showcase because I knew that we were going to be looking at the shades in the palette and it might just come across as wham, pink and purple and red in your face. But I wanted to wear this look today to showcase that this could be actually a work appropriate palette if used correctly with the correct shades in conjunction with each other, because I do feel like I am a pink as a crease color kind of girl, but I also think that this could be very work appropriate if you partner some of the shades appropriately together. So the shades that I have in my eye look today are this one here, which is kind of this muted like corally color. Then I also have this shade here, which is the only brown in the palette. And then I have this one here, which is kind of like a plummy purple color. That is what is on my outer V as well as underneath my eyes. And the shimmer that I have in my eye look today is this, topped with this. Now, I don't think that it needed to be topped with this in order to make it neutral or work appropriate. I think this is a pretty neutral, like rosy goldy brown or rosy gold color. It looks very nice with every single shade in this palette, but it is kind of a cool tone neutral as color goes. It partners really well with the brown in this palette, to be honest, but it partners really well with anything in this palette and looks very work appropriate in my humble opinion. So that is why I am in the eye look that I'm wearing today. I did it very on purpose because a lot of the eye looks that you're going to see are very pink and red and purple in your face kind of looks, and I didn't want this palette to this palette's appearance to scare you off. I do think it's a great palette. So this did come in at 4.78 stars on the Lunar Beauty website. There really isn't anywhere else that it is sold online that I could find. I do know at one point in time Lunar Beauty was sold at Sephora. I think it was like for a blip of a second. And I do also know that it is currently sold in the, I'm going to put this down because it's heavy. It is currently sold in the JCPenney Beauty sections, but I have not seen this palette in anywhere except for online. So there's that. And as I said, it was supposed to be a limited edition palette, but it is still for sale on the Lunar Beauty website, so that might have something to do with it. There was no 1-star reviews on the Lunar Beauty website, and there was only 1 2-star review. Other than that, every other review was 3 to 5 stars, equating a 4.78 star rating, and there were 40 reviews total on this palette that's been out for 4 years. So I don't know what that says about the palette. I do think that it's a decent palette. I don't know why there's only 40 reviews on it, but there's that. 4.78 stars I think is probably fair for this palette considering how one-noted it is. I do think that you can pull it and make it work appropriate when working with certain shades in the palette in conjunction with each other, but I also know that it is very one-noted, right? Like I said, pinks, purples, reds, that's what's in this palette for the most part. It is a pink-purple color story, mostly pink. There are pops of orange in here, and then of course the 1 brown and 1 black, but the black is the one that is the sequence shade, and it has purple glitters inside of it. It's not super unique in color story in my humble opinion. We've seen this color story over and over again with certain, you know, specific brands that really like this pinky purple color story. I think also it reminded me a lot of the pink and purple. The only reason why I say that is because I was using the I Love Tahiti palette up in a like a decapanning way when I pulled this into my palette review. So it reminds me a lot of the pink and purple section of the I Love Tahiti palette. I also know that ABH has done a similar color story with their Norvina collection volume 1, is it? With the pink and purple palette. It's not a hugely unique color story is all I'm trying to say. And people could look at it and say, that's so one-noted it's redundant, but I don't think that it's as redundant as it maybe looks. I do like a lot that a lot of these shades, even though they look similar, look different on an eye look, but I do feel like a lot of these shades can be duped out in other palettes, but also can be duped out within Lunar Beauty's own collection. So there's that. The formula in it feels and performs very differently from the other Lunar Beauty palettes that I have in my collection. I don't think that that is bad necessarily. They're not as buttery as previous Lunar Beauty palettes that I have in my collection. I feel like they're not grippy necessarily, but they're just not as smooth to the touch as most of the other Lunar Beauty palettes that I have in my collection. And maybe it's because it's an older palette. I'm sure Kim picked it up right after it launched the first time because it was going to be a limited edition palette, right? So it could be the length of time that it has been in a collection being used, but I also just feel like I have my first Lunar Beauty Moonspell palette and it still feels super buttery to the touch of the shades in it, whereas this one doesn't feel that way anymore. And obviously the Moonspell #1 is older, right? I would also say that they're not as maybe blendable as the other Lunar Beauty palettes that I have in my collection. I feel like I had to try just a little bit harder. Maybe that is because this is packed full of purples and reds that are pretty notoriously hard to make, purple specifically, but Manny does a really good job of trying to make them as best he can, and I feel like he did a good job, don't get me wrong. I still love this palette regardless of blendability of it because it's still blendable. It just takes I think a little bit more time than some of my other Lunar Beauty palettes in my collection. The shimmers aren't as impactful either. I found that with the shimmers, if I was not partnering them with like ColourPop Ritz or like ColourPop Ladybird or putting a different like kind of like one of these toppers over the top of some of the other shimmers, like they just weren't as pretty and sparkly. Now, I do think the ones on the top row are quite a bit more pretty and sparkly than the other ones, but this one that is like a blue purple like mix shadow just left me wanting a little bit more as I packed it onto my eye. Like, yes, it looks beautiful in this finger swatch, but it didn't, I felt like I needed to pack it onto my eye and then pack some more onto my eye for it to be as impactful as it was just then on my finger swatch. And then I also would top it with one of these toppers in order to make it sparkle like I'm used to seeing a Lunar Beauty shadow sparkle. In addition to that, like these other like shimmers, this one here, oh, and this one here. This one I don't feel like was a shimmer at all. Yes, it's shiny, but I don't feel like it. That's the thing with these three. I think that they are shiny, but not super impactful. And we're used to shiny and impactful and pigmented, and I don't know, maybe that wasn't the best choice. But I mean, look at that. I just feel like these aren't like that. These aren't as impactful like other Lunar Beauty shimmers. So the last three that I just showed you are pretty smooth in the pan, and I would honestly say they perform more like a satin, I guess, more than a shimmer, because they just glide on really smooth, kind of like a matte would. They do have a little bit of shininess to them, but definitely not sparkle. And for them to be boasted as a shimmer, like I would anticipate a whole lot more sparkle to them than shiny. That doesn't translate to bad in my mind. It just translates to very different than what I know to be true about the other Lunar Beauty palettes in my collection. It's very reminiscent to the Greek Goddess palette, in my humble opinion, and how those pans of eyeshadow were structured or formulated. And that wasn't my favorite, not only from a formulation standpoint, but also from a like color choice standpoint or color story standpoint. This one at least had the color story going for it, because I love this color story. Not a lot of fallout with this palette, which I was pretty happy with, considering there is quite a bit of powder in the pan when you are, you know, digging in and trying to pick up, except for in the shimmers. But the top row of shimmers is a little bit more sparkly, so there is a lot more powder created or kick up created from these shimmers up here, except for maybe this purple one here. So I was really happy to see that there wasn't a whole lot of fallout, because even with those shimmers, there wasn't a whole lot of glitter that was falling out throughout the day. A little bit upon application, put it over a glitter glue. It works amazing to keep everything where it needs to be. I wore this palette for the weekend that we had like Halloween shenanigans going on downtown, and my business is downtown, so I had to be down there for that Saturday specifically. I dressed up as a witch and I wore this palette alone on my eyes, and when I got home I was so beat, so wiped out. I ended up falling asleep with my makeup on my face, which is something that I don't love to do, but I do on occasion. Seems like a lot sometimes. And woke up the next morning and my makeup looked like I had just, I'm not even kidding, looked like I had just applied it. I had this, I think this shade, and this shade topped over the top of it. And even those shadows looked like I had just put them on that day. So I was really actually pleased what these shadows were able to accomplish with the glitter glue. Sometimes even with the glitter glue, they don't last that long. I mean, they last all day, but if I were to sleep in it, by the next morning, it's off my face. You couldn't even tell that I had not done my makeup that day when I woke up the next day. So not a lot of fallout with these shades. I do think that these two, because they're topper shades, so they're literally just bump over the top, do tend to have a lot more fallout. And this matte, for some reason, I felt like had an awful lot of fallout. The rest of them were actually pretty dang decent for the colors that they are. That's kind of what you want, because you don't want these purples and reds to fall out all over your face. But I do my eyeshadow first, so fallout has never been a make or break for me because I can just wash it off when I'm done doing my eyes. The wear time for these were at least 8 hours. Like I said, the other day I fell asleep with them on my face, and when I woke up, you couldn't, I mean, there literally was not even any fading along the like brow bone area. There might have been some out here from where like my head was against the pillow, but there was no fading even in the brow bone area. I really feel like I could have worn my makeup again the next day and nobody would have been the wiser. That's how I felt about it. So at least 8-hour wear time with a good primer and a good glitter glue. Much, much longer than that. That day I was wearing them at work for 8.5 hours, came home, vegged for a few, fell asleep on the couch, went up to bed, fell back asleep, and so they were on my eyes for well over 8 hours. I think that they perform as good without a primer in terms of like blendability as they do with a primer, but definitely the longevity is better with a primer. And the shimmers are best with finger application versus brush application. You're literally not going to be able to pick up enough on a brush to make it as impactful as you want it to be. If you want a good level of shiny and sparkly, use your finger because a brush just isn't going to do it for you, and a glitter glue is probably a must for that impact, not necessarily for it to stick around. The mattes blend really, really well, and again, they perform well with or without a primer. For blendability sake, I do think that they tend to fade a lot quicker without a primer. Most of them are really, really easy to work with. I just feel like they're maybe slightly less pigmented or slightly more fickle than other Lunar Beauty matte shadows have been in the past. But again, not horrible and definitely not bad. I just think it's because of the colors, honestly. Manny has done purples and pinks in the past, but not this many. Like when I think of like the Strawberry Dream palette that has pinks specifically in it and blues, does really good with blues. The first Moonspell palette has some purples in it and pinks, but not to this magnitude. So I just think it's about the color story. The shimmers are most beautiful layered. I had a better time and enjoyed the shimmers much better if I was layering them, multiple of them on top of each other to create different kinds of like eye looks with different colors of shimmers that maybe don't go together all the time, like this one. And this one actually went beautifully on top of each other, and then I partnered that with it. I think I have an eye look picture with those two because I was actually shocked that this deep purple and this kind of like rusty red went together as well as they did. Even though in the camera it looks rather pink, it's actually kind of more of a red tone. I feel like the shimmers were so much better when you layered them and played a little bit with the shimmers. These two being the toppers that went over the top of just about anything, changed the looks altogether. I know that it's this color on top of my eyes right now, but I had partnered it with a Ritz, the Ritz shade from ColourPop in one look, and it looked more like kind of golden. And today I have this topped over the top of it, and it looks a little bit more like creamy, pinky coral actually, which is what I was going for considering the mattes in this eye look. I think that they're just much better if you like to layer them and play around with them. And the last note I have on this really is, again, the reason why I'm wearing this eye look today. I feel like that when a person looks at this palette firsthand, that it looks very one-noted and like there's not a whole lot of variety here with an eye look. But I do think that you could pull a good work-appropriate eye look out of this palette, as scary as it looks, by just using certain shades in conjunction with others. Like I do think this one with maybe this berry in the outer corner and like this one on the lid topped with this and maybe some black in there as well would be a great work appropriate eye look as well. I think that you just have to imagine what it could look like from a very different perspective than what you're seeing. So you have to have that lens of creativity to be able to see the work eye looks and not just look at all the purples and pinks and go, it's just a purple pink palette. This red berry shade I actually used with a lot of these shadows, and it was my favorite one to use. I used the brown I think twice, I used the black I think twice, and the rest was deepened up by the berry shade just to kind of create a little bit more of a normal eye look from some of the craziness of the purples and pinks in this palette. I think the one that I used the least was probably this one over here, just because I felt like this one and this one very much resembled each other in an eye look, and I liked how this one functioned better than this one. This one blended just so much easier and kind of went with a lot of things a lot better than the other one. I love that we have a full row of shimmers up here. I love that we have some lighter tones here, except for this crazy red over here, right? But for the most part, we have some really light tones here, some kind of medium tones here, and some really deep tones here. I love the makeup of this palette. I don't know why we put 20 shades into this palette. I think we could have made this palette with just 15 shades, but I am not unhappy to have this palette in my life. So as I said, there are 16 shadows in this palette that are not eye safe. So if you are somebody who does not want to have palettes in your collection that have eyeshadows that are, well, shadows that are not eye safe, then this is probably not the palette for you. The 4 that are eye safe are going to be Agatha, which is this one, Sally, which is this one, Mel, which is this one, and Marie, which is this one. So basically the normal colors, almost every color that's in my eye look today is considered eye safe. So there's only 4 shades in here that are not, that are eye safe according to the FDA. Again, I've said this before 500,000 times. I think that the FDA's idea of eye safety is a little bit antiquated. Followed them with the cavemen. That's how I feel about it. So I will wear them on my eyes. Again, I've not had any problems, but just because I've not had problems doesn't mean you won't have problems. So you do what you will with that information. I am going to swatch the palette. We're going to start up here and go across. You guys should have seen the eye looks that I was able to create with this palette, or some of the eye looks that I was able to create with this palette over the last, I think it's been a month that this has been in use for me, maybe a little less than that, but I also had a wedding that I went to, so I wasn't wearing this palette the full, 7 days that I was gone. There was a period of time in that month-long process where I wasn't wearing this palette, but I really like this palette. I would probably, if somebody was looking for a good pink purple palette, I would recommend this palette for sure. I do think that the 4.78 stars on the Lunar Beauty website is fair. I wonder why there's only been 40 reviews in 4 years. And I also wonder why there's no 1 or 2 star reviews. That always makes me just say, what's going on here in my brain, right? But I do think 4.78 stars is fair. I would even venture to say just 4.7 flat. I don't know that 4.78 it makes a difference. 4.7 flat, 4.6, somewhere in there is probably where I would rank it. And I do feel like it is a little bit different as far as formulation goes from my other Lunar Beauty palettes, but I don't have anything newer. So maybe this is his new formula and I just don't know. So that said, let's do some swatching. The first row is all shimmers, and this is what it looks like. I think it is such a pretty row of shadows. We have Agatha, which is considered a transparent white reflect glitter topper. Then we have Luna, which is also considered a transparent multi-reflect glitter topper, but this one has a pink base. And then we have Mildred, which is shimmer in my eye look today. This is kind of like a rose gold shift. They have it listed as a duochrome. I don't know that I would say duochrome, but that's what they say it is. And then we have Myrtle. This one I do think is more of a duochrome. It's the purple blue shift duochrome, like shimmery shadow, which is beautiful on the lid once packed on. This finger swatch is also really beautiful. This is what it looks like on your lid when you pack it on, although I would say a slight bit more cakey because you're having to pack it on. And then we have Misty, which is a rose gold shimmer, and it is so pretty. That is another one that I would say you could use and make a lot of eye looks, very work appropriate eye looks. Okay, the next row is all mattes, and it looks like this, with the thumb being the 5th shade in the row. This row, it's kind of like that light row. So the first one is going to be Alex, which is a matte lilac. Then we have Cameron, which is a matte coral. Then we have, and that's a really bright coral. Then we have Sally, which is a matte milky rose coral. Then we have Jillian, which is a matte orchid color. Then we have Willow, which is a matte vibrant red. This one I have found does actually show up as a red in an eye look to some extent. If you just pack it in there, it is going to look red. When you blend it out at all, the edges of course are going to look pink. I feel like it's a really good shade to have in this palette. It also is the most like grippy of the shadows as far as how it feels to the touch. It also is the one that stains pretty much near the worst. They all kind of do though. As you guys can see, the colors are still remnanting on my fingers. All of them are pretty much built the same as far as staining power goes. Like, I feel like the pigmentation is definitely here. You definitely know that this is a pigmented palette because these shadows do stain. This was a stupid sweater to wear today. All right, this is the next row. We do have the last 3 shimmers are here in this row, and there are these 2 here and this one here on my pinky, and then we have another kind of hot like corally orange color. The first one is Louise, is technically a royal purple shimmer. Then we have Zelda, which is a magenta shimmer. Again, it's more shiny than it is sparkly. Then we have Hilda, which is a matte berry, and this one is one of the ones that I said had a ton of fallout. Then we have Grams. Grams is a ruby shimmer. And then we have Freya. Freya is a matte hot coral. And the last 5 I'm going to put down on my wrist because I've got no more room on my hand. This is what those look like. This is a row of all mattes except for this black one, which is what I would consider the sequin shadow. It is a black with purple glitters. So, and in that you have Maggie. Maggie is a matte deep like grape color. Then you have Mel, which is a matte neutral deep brown. It's not as deep as it could be though. And then we have Macy, which is a matte deep plum. Then we have Queenie, which is a matte deep burgundy, one of my favorites in the palette. And then we have Marie, which is the matte deep charcoal sequin shade. It's got red and purple glitters in it, and it is a really good black, to be honest. I know it says charcoal, but I feel like it's a little bit more black than it is charcoal. And what I like best about it, and I attribute it being like this to the fact that it is sequin shade and it has those glitters in it, and I feel like to some extent that can and has in the past really impacted how a shadow blends, but I feel like it just helps this one for whatever reason. I didn't have any problems with this black getting away from me, and I know that that is a problem for a lot of people with black, and why a lot of people are afraid of black. I actually used it in a purple halo eye, and I just totally grabbed my sweater without thinking of the colors on my fingers. I need to get these off of my hands, but I did a purple halo eye with this palette that was one of my favorite looks. I actually had a video that I filmed that I was wearing that purple halo eye in, and I used that black on the outer and inner corners, and sometimes I struggle with black on the outer and inner corners of my halo eyes because they irritate my eyes. It irritates my eyes, number one, but also black just really has a tendency to get away from you and blend, and that one just didn't. I had a really good time with it. But then the shimmers, if you're counting on those shimmers being part of that shade, don't really stay there unless you wet it and like pat it on your eye instead of like put it on your eye with a dry brush and then blend it. I just really feel like it was a great palette, and I'm really very happy to have it in my collection, and couldn't be more grateful to Kim for sending it to me, because, you know, we out here on these platforms, we don't have to send our decluttered items anywhere. We could sell them. We could, you know, give them to friends and family. But the fact that she thought of me enough to send me this was just super heartwarming. And I'm so excited and so happy to have the friends that I have here on this platform, and really excited to have this palette, actually. Do I have another color story like it in my collection? Probably. Like I said, I think it can be duped out with the pink purple section in the I Love Tahiti palette. I think it, oh, let me go get it. If you look at just the pink purple section, so those 3 rows of this palette, I think you could see like a ton of similarities, maybe even throwing in like a couple of the shades from the next 2 rows. Like, I do think that these 2 palettes could dupe each other. I also think, like I said, that Manny has maybe duped some of those shades himself in some of his other palettes. But I like it being in this one palette. I love the packaging of this palette. That is always what sells me on Lunar Beauty, besides the fact that I know that it's good quality makeup. It's what always sells me with Lunar Beauty, because he has some pretty phenomenal choices when it comes to the component of his makeup. I'm really happy to have it in my collection. So would I repurchase it? If I didn't own it, I'd still want it. So I definitely recommend it to a friend. Do I think you need to have it if you have something like this in your collection already? Probably not, because like I said, it can be duped out. Do you need to have it if you are somebody who only wants makeup that you can use on your eyes, that the FDA says you can use on your eyes? Probably not. There's only 4 shades in that palette that are technically able to be used on your eyes. Do you need it if you're a person that loves purples and pinks and reds? I mean, I think needing it is subjective to you, who you are as a consumer, but I would definitely recommend it if you asked. That said, I like the palette. I'm super happy to have it in my collection, and it will be sticking around. So thank you so much, Kim, for allowing me to have that little piece of joy in my life, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the review. I'm gonna go pick the next palette that I will be reviewing in my palette roulette series. I will be right back. So technically this is mini palettes, but I did think mini as an MANY, but I did think it would be a good idea to bring all of them in at the same time. I just don't love reviewing 5 shades at a time. And some of these I have used in videos even, but I have not done a review video on them yet. So I'm bringing in all of my 5-pan minis that are in my drawer of shame right now because it just makes sense to do. I'll start with the 3 that I have used, just haven't done a review on yet. Almost all of them are Natasha Denona. There's only one that is not. I have the Natasha Denona Mini Biba, the Natasha Denona Mini Rose. This one I actually used in a video all on its own. And then I have the Natasha Denona Mini Nude. I think Mini Nude and Mini Biba were brought in for my deck of panning for some reason. Maybe an Oh the Shame product or whatever. These look very similar in some aspects, but also very different in others. The ones that I haven't used yet are going to be the Mini Glam, which is a little more cool tone. The Mini My Dream. My Dream is one of my favorite of the Natasha Denona midi size palettes. And my newest one, Mini Gloom. The other 5-pan palette that I'm bringing in is one that I got in a free gift with purchase when I just purchased stuff from Ulta Beauty for my birthday. And that is just this Ulta Beauty 5-pan palette. So it's going to be wild to have an Ulta Beauty 5-pan palette, Ulta Beauty being on the very opposite end of the cost structure than Natasha Denona's 5 pans. I mean, I think this one is maybe, I don't know how many dollars, and these ones are almost 30 for 5 pans of shadow. But this one also reminds me a lot of the Natasha Denona Mini Biba palette. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. But so that means I am bringing in 7 5-pan eyeshadow palettes, so we will have 35 shades to meander through. Some of them I've used before, so there's that. I love this actually because this is 7 palettes that'll hit my No Pan Left Behind for the quarter 4. But I also just really kind of want to get use out of these because they're just sitting in here and they're really good, like one and done and take on the run kind of eyeshadow palettes in my humble opinion. So quads and quints are really good for that. So I hope that sounds like something you're interested in watching. I just want to kind of get them out of the way. October to November is a good time to do it. I think I could be really fast with these guys. I mean, really in 7 days I could probably have these done because in my experience, one of these palettes I could have completed in one eye look. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best that you can. Let me know what you think about the Moonspell 2 palette if you have it, if you've used it. Let me know what you think about any of these minis. If you have them, if you've used them, I would be interested to know your thoughts and opinions. So don't forget to hit your girl up down in the comments section. That said, I promise I am trying to catch up on comments right now. If you have commented recently, probably in the last month, and I haven't commented back, I promise it is coming. I'm trying to catch up. I've been a bad YouTuber lately, and I'm working on getting my life together and finding that balance still, but I'll get back there. I have friends that keep texting me, and they're like, dude, you've been MIA for far too long. We're tired of it. So I promise you, I'm getting back in it and trying to just catch my breath and find that healthy balance. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best that you can. I hope that you're all loving each other, being kind humans, and living your best life. And until next time, bye friends.